indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We will move along to the approval of the agenda as amended. The agenda for tonight is amended under presentations, the report of the reevaluation committee. I'll explain further when we get there, but that has been removed from the agenda for tonight. Would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion from Director Dondelinger with a second from Director Ward. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll bring up recognitions. If Principal Rusk would come forward. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I first want to start off by thanking all of you for attending the many events that we had for our homecoming celebration week this past year. Recognitions from Brainerd High School include a big congratulations to our Warrior Girls Tennis team for being the Central Lakes Conference champions. They also competed this past weekend and did really well and will be continuing on in postseason play next week. Congratulations to the following who were selected for the Brainerd High School homecoming court: Annie Pierce, Nate Herkenhoff, Alice Balsley, George Campbell, Lexi Struess, Dylan Sipniski, Brandon Stark, Savannah Johnson, and Sean Engelstead. And congratulations to Eli Hulse and Molly Polkamp for being selected as our 2023 Homecoming King and Queen. Those are the updates from Brainerd High School.
Great. Thank you, Principal Rusk. Dr. Stelmach, I see you're in the house. Would you want to come up and read this next one for us? Followed by Principal Rasky.
I was a dab embarrassed about, I'm in my workout clothes, but we had a family emergency, so my husband had to go one direction and I was scrambling at the last minute, so I apologize for I didn't have time to change back into my school attire. So at Baxter, we are congratulating our student council members and recognizing them tonight, and named to our student council from the 4th grade this year for the first half of the school year: Nora Kahn, Lincoln Jewell, Luna Milady, Lucy Nelson, Laken Otterson, Olivia Quirin, Adeline Ryan, and Ellison Shepard, and they've been very active. We meet once a week, and they've had quite a bit going on already this school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi there. I want to honor our student council members for this year. They were voted on by their classmates, and our student council are Cassidy Sparrow, Noah McGibbon, Austin Logan, Cannon Stewart, Juliet Clabo, Ellen Larson, Kennedy Knossla, Ellie Marsh, Lexi Obazinski, Hadley Ward, Kinley Fortis, and Silver Estrada. So congratulations to them.
Thank you, Principal Rasky. All right, we'll move on to public input. Do my usual read here before we launch into public input. A member of the public can address the board during this time. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Complaints or allegations against students or employees may not be discussed due to data privacy. Complaints or allegations must be submitted in writing to Superintendent Hahn. The Board of Education and Superintendent will not converse with guests to address the topics discussed at this time. So with that noted, our first speaker this evening will be Mr. Doug Kern.
Thank you. Talking about the mental health crisis, we have a crisis going on with our children. During the 1970s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, we had little girls trying to look like Barbie. And that was wrong because, you know, Barbie just doesn't fit the mold of what anybody can achieve. That created a mental health thing with little girls where they became anorexic. They tried to fit that mold. What I see happening is that we're creating a mental health crisis over these books that are in the schools. The teaching of am I a girl or am I a boy? Confusion at its finest. Allowing these pornographic books for children to access creates a mental health issue. To say we are concerned about mental health and not dealing with these books in our schools is not only against the law, but it's disingenuous. And to me, it's almost creating a problem so you can fix it. We shouldn't be creating problems. We should be fixing the problems and removing these books. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Our next speaker, Dottie Smith, please.
Good evening. My name is Dottie Smith. I am here tonight to provide an observation and a description of what I witnessed during the Reevaluation of Resources Committee meeting. On September 18th, I attended my first ever Reevaluation of Resource public meeting to support my friend in her book complaint. As I sat there, my attention was drawn to this one particular person on the committee who was obviously in control. I asked my friend who he was. She said he wasn't the chair, he's a director of teaching and learning. It became clear to me this man intended to dominate the outcome of this meeting. When it was time to vote, the chair would give instructions only to have this man re-explain them to everyone at the meeting, making sure all 11 people on the committee understood how he is going to vote and what he expected of them. While observing, it appeared the man was exercising unrestrained power by repeatedly interrupting or talking over the chair. Twice I suggested to my friend that we leave because there was no meaningful conversation going on, and in my opinion, this meeting outcome was predetermined by the director of teaching and learning. It was surprising how little input was given by the majority of the committee members. Their participation was very limited. I have read the policy 606, and it's shocking that the committee allowed so much inappropriate behavior to go on in the meeting that had nothing to do with the scope of their responsibilities and should not have been allowed. Thank you.
Karen Knudsen, please.
It's okay. My name is Karen Knudsen. I am a citizen of Baxter and grandmother of children in the district. And I actually wasn't going to speak, but this afternoon, as I was thinking of what was happening, and I heard that the group of people who were talking about the books and whether or not they should be left in the library decided that X-rated books that are recommended, I read the recommendation, I read the review, would be left in the library that were to be read only by 18 and above, adult only. So that's a start, but what I did this afternoon startled me because I was listening to the testimonies of Holocaust survivors. I have a good friend who is a Holocaust survivor, and I've spent a fair amount of time with her. She's explained to me a lot of the things that have happened. She died recently. She died a year ago in October. But as we talked about what had been happening, and then I watched the testimonies, these are the things that happened when they were pulled out of their homes because they did not agree with the leadership. They were taken away from their parents. They were put in government housing that was obviously way too small. They were put in prison camps. And if the parents didn't agree, they were either killed or they were just removed from their children. Once they were in the prison camp, they were given toxic injections to see what they would do to them, to see what would happen to their skin as it turned white, as some of them had diseases that their legs would fill with pus and gross bacteria, where some of the boys their testicles and their penises were cut with glass in order to see what would happen. And the girls were also castrated, not castrated, but they were, whatever you call it. Anyway, they were cut and their body parts were cut. and then they would milk things out of these people. It was horrible, but in addition to that, I'm still reeling a bit from what happened, but if parents didn't comply, okay, I already had that, the mothers would also be experimented with. They provided sex changes, and they decided to do experiments with sex changing. The people.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay. I'm just saying it could happen again, couldn't it?
And our final speaker for this evening, Shirley Yeager, please.
I came here tonight to talk in regard to an agenda item that you say has now been pulled. And I'm wondering if I can ask you a question. Has it been pulled permanently or only for tonight?
We're actually not allowed to answer questions during public input. I'll explain a little bit more when we get to that part of the agenda.
Well, I will go ahead then. If it's been pulled permanently, this might be redundant, but I will go ahead anyway. So good evening, Mr. Chairman and other board members. I'm here tonight to address one item on the agenda, the process one must go through to bring to light one single book sitting in a school library has proven to be not only tedious and daunting, but also seemingly useless. I am the complainant who brought the book Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas to the school's attention, pointing out the sexually explicit language it contains. It was impressed upon me that I must follow policy 606 to the letter if I wanted to be heard. So I proceeded to do so. And shock upon shock, I am the only one apparently who bothered to do that. You have before you on the agenda, which is no longer there, an item generated from that committee, a recommendation, not about the book in question, but about a group of other books. A preemptive strike, you might call it, but I call it a breach of policy. Policy 606 states the following. In Part 2, called Reevaluation of Resources Procedures, in Section 2, under Procedures, Item E, it says, a request for reevaluation of a resource form shall be completed for each resource for which there is a concern. I understand that to mean one book per form, meaning one book per committee. Under item I, the Committee for Reevaluation of Resources shall within 30 days, number 3, follow all the procedures outlined in section 4, which is the committee responsibilities. Under section 3, Committee for Reevaluation of Resources, item B, guidelines are called guidelines, and item 8, it says, at the second meeting, the committee shall, and this is the complete list of their duties. Number 1, hear testimony. Number 2, examine the questioned resource, etc. Number 3, weigh the values, etc. Number 4, adhere to the principles of the freedom to learn and to read, etc. Number 5, determine professional acceptance, etc. 6, discuss the resource, etc. 7, make a decision by public vote. And 8,
Mrs. Yeager,
prepare a
that's 3
written
minutes.
report.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Recommendations should not even be there, ever.
All right, we shall move along to the approval of the minutes from our meeting on September 11th.
I'll make a motion to approve.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Brecken to approve the board meeting minutes from September 11th. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Up next is the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you.
I'll second.
So we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Brecken to approve the consent calendar as presented. Discussion.
Is the consent calendar, the staff changes, donations, trades, home requests for bids, Edina listing contract, all, everything that's listed below that, is that what's on it?
Yes, all the way up to item number 8.
I'm good with it.
Director Heidman, did you have a question?
A comment is all. There's a name on there that we are quite familiar with, and that is Ms. Janet Horn. She has been in the school district for how many years, Janet?
17.
And I'm sure we'll talk about this more in other meetings, but I saw that on these staff change and leaves, and I just want to say thank you for all that you've done for all these years, et cetera. So, thank you.
Also, on the revised MSBA policies 533 through 907, I don't know if everybody read through them. There wasn't a lot of change to these. There were just a few language changes in each one of these related to statutory requirements from legislation. So there was no functional change to the operation of any of those policies.
I guess I do have a question.
Sure.
It's probably for Tim. On 721, so is this just basically telling us how you have to, you know, it says that on page 2, it says that you could spend $10,000 as a micro purchase. Anything under $250 is a small purchase, and a small purchase should have 3 different kinds of bidding on it. So is this just rules on federal grants or all grants of how the school spends the money? I mean, there's stuff about employees and all, this is a pretty confusing policy. It's 13 pages.
Here comes Marcy to
I'm
answer.
going to defer to.
Yeah, what's the deal, Marcy? What is this stuff?
I just know the limit about
That what
what
it
I'm
is?
allowed to
You hit
spell
the
with
nail
my
on the head.
budget.
It's basically for federal money.
There's rules for federal grants.
Exactly.
But there's rules for other ones, but they're different.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. We wouldn't want to just have one set of rules.
No.
This is government. We gotta
And
have a lot
that's-
of rules.
That's whether we're bidding or an expenditure of 10,000, under 10,000, you don't need bids.
Yep.
Above 10,000, you do.
So those are procuring requirements. This is
Okay.
federal revenue that we would be having to follow guidelines on
Okay,
in purchases.
okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Director Ward.
under the donations and grants, there's been some significant donations this past month. And I think every time that happens, in my opinion, it needs to be recognized. I know that we send letters out and things as such, but we've got some nice donations from MJ's Neighborhood Ice Cream and from Brainerd Eagles. And then a lot of folks and others were appreciative of all donations, of course, to the school district. But there's been a lot of folks that have provided school supplies for the start of our children in our schools as well. So I just wanted to recognize all of those efforts. Thank you.
That's excellent, Director Ward. Thank you. Any other discussion or commentary? Okay, hearing none, then all those in favor of approval of the consent calendar as presented signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Moving along to new business. First up is Director Murtha with the district site continuous improvement plans, facility by facility.
Okay, I'm going to work off 2 screens at the moment just to make sure I don't lose any of my notes as I go through. My printed copies are still over at the LEC, so once we're all moved over here, we'll be in good shape. Okay, so what I have for you tonight under this first item is 2 pieces. First is a 22-23 Student Achievement Report. In responding to questions from the board, both at committee meetings and at retreats, I've tried to make this as clear, simple, and concise as humanly possible. It was a point of emphasis and feedback that I received after last year's one. So we'll take a stab at being as clear and short as possible. So the very first thing we want to take a look at is just the overview by level, elementary, middle, and high school. What you have here are the student achievement reports by content area from the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments for each level on the left, and on the right is what the state comparative score is. We are still consistently outperforming the state. We are also still consistently not performing at a level that we wish to perform. There are some very significant celebrations for us to take a look at this year. Nisswa Elementary had a 7% proficiency improvement in 4th grade math compared to performance of its cohort in 3rd grade. So as those 3rd graders moved to 4th grade, their performance improved. That's not a common pattern of assessment. It is normal for starting in 3rd grade all the way through the high school to be some form of drop-off in performance. Why? Because an awful lot of life can occur between 3rd grade and 10th grade or 11th grade, depending on the assessment. It's our task to start as high as possible and keep that as flat as possible, and when possible, to move that upwards. And in this case, Nisswa successfully did it in math in the 3rd to 4th grade area. They were not alone. Riverside Elementary saw a 13% proficiency improvement in 4th grade math and a 10% proficiency improvement in 4th grade reading compared to the cohort scores in 3rd grade. That's an impressive change over time. The high school also exceeded its ACOMP goal by reading by 6%. Forest View had 11% proficiency improvement in 5th grade reading compared to the entire cohort across the 6 elementaries in 4th grade. Forest View had a 16% proficiency improvement in 8th grade math compared to the performance of the cohort in 7th grade. Normally, goals are set anywhere from the 3 to 5% range. We have some indicators, not uniform throughout the district, obviously, of high single digits and double-digit improvements. What we think we're starting to see here is our attempts to respond to coming out of the pandemic are starting to take root. It's not consistent over the entire district yet, which you'll see in the comparative scores by each site, but progress is being made. There are things to celebrate. Graduation rates. Okay, graduation rates are a lag indicator from the state of Minnesota, so I will not have the 22-23 spring data till next year. Okay, so what we'll have is the last spring, the 2022 spring data. The improvement for the senior high school from 93% to 96% puts them in full compliance with state law and expectations for graduation rates. Lincoln Education Center has seen an improvement as well. The Learning Center, Brainerd Learning Center, had a slight decline, but for these 2 sites, their populations are small enough that one student can move a 5, 7, 12% change. So if ISD 181 Learning Center is at a 50-45, it's probably the same number of students who are proficient as the previous, or graduating as the previous year. The other piece to remember, and this is extremely important, please, for Lincoln Education Center and ISD 181, they're being evaluated on the same 4-year graduation rate that the high school is being evaluated on. If we were to provide the data on the 6-year and 7-year graduation rates, it would be comparable in the high 90s. These are very successful programs. The fact that they're graduating anywhere from a third to half of their students on time, when normally one of the criteria for going to the Learning Center is you're behind in credits, is a significant success. And those principals deserve the recognition for their teams. This is the annual data portrait, or the demographic portrait of the district. I know it's a very, very busy document, but it lays out very clearly who we are. The conclusion I want to share with you is that for all students of color, we had a 1% increase from previous year. It doesn't sound like much, but these sorts of increases compound over time. 10 years ago, the number of minority students in the district was less than 3% aggregate. Now it is over 11%. We are a changing district. We are becoming more diverse. And that is an opportunity for us to embrace the diversity and to see the new flavors that are coming into the district. So we are changing, and we're responding to those changes, and we look forward to those challenges as we move forward. Special education still is a challenge for us in terms of identification. 28% of the students in our district are in special ed before their first day of kindergarten. That number remains relatively stable throughout the entire 12 years of the 13 years of their education, but it's not the same 28%. Underneath that stable idea is an immense amount of churn. That 28% coming into kindergarten is very heavily influenced by speech language issues. A lot of it, we believe, is brought on by lack of early childhood programming and experiences due to the pandemic. Our speech language pathology programs address that really well. We do see students exiting special ed at that time, but we also see a corresponding increase of other students at an older age falling into special education because core instruction for some students is not successful to the level we wish it is, and that's what's reflected in the MCA scores you saw on the first slide. And that's where we have to make our biggest growth. This is a slide that reflects the breakdown of the 5 most common disabilities for our special ed students. 88% of our students fall in either SLD, SLI, ASD, EBD, OHE. I'll talk through those, the alphabet soup in a moment. What we have is specific learning disabilities, speech language impaired, autism spectrum disorder, emotional behavior disorders, and other health disabilities. That's 88% of our placements in special ed. That other 12% is spread out by the rest of the ones identified on the key on the right. Math proficiency by site. In red, you see the state comparative for that level. It's corresponding to what I showed you in the first slide. But this breaks that first slide out to the specific schools. What we see is our schools with the highest percentage of poverty also have the highest percentage of special ed and have the highest percentage of opportunities for growth. And that's, again, where we need to focus our efforts there. When we all come together at Forest View, we still outperform the state, not by as much as we used to, and not by as much as we wish to. And the same can be said for the high school. Though currently, again, you see a pattern of growth in math where moving from Forest View to the high school, we're seeing student achievement improve. So there are conscious things occurring there that are bearing some fruit. This slide you've seen before in the past. It shows the achievement gaps for students in economic hardship and students in special education. And what it shows is that our attempts here have not borne the fruit that we wish they would have. We're still struggling to close the achievement gaps for students in poverty and students in special ed. Even when proficiency rates go up, they go up correspondingly, not closing a gap. Similar patterns play out in reading across the district. Though a bit more competitive against the state by more sites, we still have the same uneven situations where the schools with the highest rates of poverty have the greatest challenge. And then as we move to the middle school and to the high school, we see ourselves still outperforming the state, not to the level we wish, but we are seeing growth between Forest View and the high school. In special education, in reading, this is our largest achievement gap. And this is the most pernicious one we have. 64% of our students who are not in special education are reading at grade level. But 23% of our students in special education are reading at grade level, creating a significant 41% achievement gap. This we have to address, and we'll talk about our plan to do that towards the end of this presentation. In science, since science is tested only 3 times, 5th grade, 8th grade, and at the high school, Forest View has 2 tests in it. The elementaries have no tests, so that's why there's no elementary score. We significantly outperformed the state at the middle school level, and those scores only continue to rise at the secondary level. One of the key pieces structurally in the district that supports this is because 5th grade is at Forest View, unlike at elementary schools. There is a dedicated period, 50 minutes a day, every day, for science. This gives our science teachers the ability to loop back through 3rd and 4th grade standards and still fulfill all of the 5th grade standards. It generates an immense amount of success for us. It means the instruction we do is effective, and the structure that's in place to support that is helping. MCA Science Proficiency by Group. Here we see smaller achievement gaps, and we also see some success in closing student achievement gaps as our groups work through their science curriculum. So what do we do next? This is what I'm asking for your support in approving. These are the 3 components of the continuous improvement priorities for the district for this coming year, and probably will be extended over the next couple of years. It starts with the implementation of the district multi-tiered system of support. That's about developing our universal screener, the assessment battery that we use to make sure that no child is falling through the cracks, whether it's in, math, reading, or in behavior. It's about identifying the appropriate interventions to use. And it's also about generating a handbook that is a resource for both administrators and teachers to execute that MTSS plan. I've shared with you on other occasions elements and structures of the MTSS plan, and I'm perfectly prepared to answer any questions you have about that. To execute that plan, we're using the FastBridge assessments as recommended by the state of Minnesota. It's a Minnesota-developed assessment for Minnesota students. We're doing the early math and early reading assessments for students in K and 1, A math and A reading for grades 2 through 12, and SABRES for elementary, My SABRES for the older students, grades 5 through 12. Finally, we're focusing on implementing the READ Act. That starts with the work that we shared with you around our word study work and the work that we're doing in moving from analytic phonics to synthetic phonics. We also need to create a new district literacy position, and we'll be bringing forth a recommendation for that position, as its job description will be different from the old K-4 literacy coordinator position, which did the training and coaching of our literacy coaches. We have also applied for a CLSD grant at the state of Minnesota for $250,000 for staff development funds specifically for literacy and training them on what's called Carry All. It's a language learning structure. It is staff development around structured literacy provided by Carey, C-A-R-E-I, from the University of Minnesota. It's one of the 3 approved staff development structures from MDE. It is the most cost-efficient one that we chose. With that $250,000, we will be able to train 49 teachers and 11 administrators in the appropriate literacy model for the READ Act. The note to make here is that's 41 teachers out of probably 200 who will need to be trained by the time the READ Act is fully implemented. It will take time and it will take resources, which is why we're applying for grants to support that work. So that is the district plan. These elements of the district plan are identified in each of the site plans as work that they have to do as well in fulfilling this. And what you'll see coming up in a moment is each of the site plans, you'll see their site goals, and in that one pager, many of the sites have identified what their action steps are relative to these pieces. The number one thing that we're attempting to do is create alignment and coherence. What we want to make sure is that we're all heading towards the same goal and that we're all on the same path. In the sites that saw some of the most dramatic gains, even though it was localized between grades and content level, one of the key things that the administrative teams and their site teams did was they focused very heavily on getting everyone on the same page. No independent contractors, no one gets to go rogue. This is what the team is doing. And when they did that, they saw really good things occur. That's the state of the district academically at this time. I hope that I haven't made it too short, too thin, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to process and ask questions as such.
Mr. Chair, Director Ward. Mr. Murtha, what is is there a cap on the state grants?
On the CLSD,
Yeah.
the limit for any school district was 250,000. We
I
asked
thought it
for
was
the max.
500, it's 250?
Right.
Okay.
What's CLSD?
Local.
Comprehensive state development of.
This is the REDAC training they're talking about, right?
Yeah. We joined a cohort with Carey, Carei. I keep having to say that because Carey's sitting in the back. But we joined a cohort to make sure that, since they're the ones who are the architect of much of the REDAC, that we wanted to get our staff development from them.
So then with the REDAC, did we change curriculum or?
We won't know that until January.
When they
We
come up.
respond to what they identify as the 3 approved curricula. And I'm anxious for the implications of that.
I thought maybe this carry-all was one of them.
Carry-all is a staff development structure that can train on the framework, but it's not an actual resource.
Gotcha.
And that's, I don't know if Carrie and I are speaking the same vocabulary yet, because I haven't seen what they publish. The definition of curriculum that I operate on and I drive the systems on is curriculum is a relationship between outcomes, standards, inputs such as instruction and assessment. That those 3 things combined together in that relationship is your curriculum. The resource is the least important piece of this. The teacher's instructional mastery relative to understanding the target, understanding how we're going to assess it, and responding to those, moving between them, that's the essence of instruction, of good teaching. I don't know if that's what they're calling a curriculum or if they're calling a curriculum, page 22 of a bound resource. And we'll find out in January. But they're only choosing 3. Now, we're not obligated to choose those 3. We're only obligated to choose of those 3 if we want to use their money to buy them. My suggestion is we continue to respond to what our data tells us around what our students need. And the number one thing we've identified is the phonics issue, which is a key component to structured literacy, and so we have to do that. But how far that goes into guided reading, small group reading, decodable text, got to see what they put on the table in January. In my mind, that's what we have to do.
Do we have to take one of those 3 to qualify for that grant you're looking for?
Not for that grant, no, it's separate. But that grant is intended to align, the PD that's coming in that grant is intended to align with whatever those 3 are. So they're going to, that grant should teach us the instructional framework, not necessarily the curriculum resource.
Mr. Murtha, can you talk a little bit more about the Fast Bridge assessments? So you said they were math, reading, and SABRES?
SABRES is a behavior assessment that allows us to get a dipstick indicator on how a kid is feeling or how a kid is aware of their own executive function. So if a student is identifying that they're feeling sad or if they're feeling anxious, that's important information that we might not always get just from the observation of a child being quiet or being active. We need a little bit more data there in order to do that. Now, good teachers have always done this and always done this through relationships, but this is how we codify this and allows us to create systemic responses to this. This gives us the ability to know when to reach out to the collaborative worker or when to just let a child be quiet and let them process because they're doing well, they're just a quiet child. It gives us one more tool in the toolbox for doing what I think we as parents really want teachers to do first and foremost, which is to understand my child. You know, as a parent, what was one of the key things I wanted the teacher to know who my child was, okay? And we believe that does that for us. It's one more tool.
Sure.
Director Hayden?
Yeah, I was privy to sitting in on the curriculum meeting, and I want to share what Mr. Murtha is saying here. Sabres, I had a few people within the district reach out to me, and they were concerned about this tool. This is not a file that we're setting up on students that we're going to track what they're going to be doing from K1 or grade 1 through grade 12. It's not a tracking tool for that. It's a tool, so under FastBridge, we're able to see a child, they're having some issues, let's find out what they are, and we don't want to let it go too far. And I learned a lot about, and I did a lot of research, and I asked a ton of questions, and it's not what some people think it's to be. We're not setting up files on kids. And I gave an example in the curriculum meeting that, let's say a husband and a wife divorce in grade 7 and the child has kind of gone downhill, et cetera, with grades, et cetera. That's not going to be tracked. I mean, we're not going to have something in a file that says little Johnny did this or little Annie did that. I mean, it's a tool to get quick results to the children, and let's get them on the path so that they are able to catch up if necessary. So I wanted to add some of my context from it as well. I mean, I think it's going to be a good thing. And FastBridge is also a Minnesota-based company, isn't it, Mr. Murtha?
That is correct.
That's what I thought, yeah.
So do we have to use FastBridge?
No, we do not, but there are only 2 approved from MDE at the moment as universal screeners for MTSS, and the other is Dibble's 8.
So do we have to use MDE approved people for your MTSS?
Yes,
Because the state's not doing real hot, so I really hate to kind of follow their lead on this.
Well, I think what you're seeing is that this is a new direction for them. They've never given direction or a requirement before. MDE historically has been extremely careful never to recommend a curriculum, never to recommend anything other than, here's what the research says about instruction, here are your standards, here's the MCAs, here are the test specs, good luck. That's always what MDE has done. The University of Minnesota through Cary has been granted an authority to be more prescriptive than MDE does, than the Department of Education. And this is a brand new thing. I think it's born out of a frustration that we all share that, okay, you've got 361 school districts all trying to reinvent the wheel. How about we all get on one page and see what happens? We've tried it the other way. Let's try it this way. I don't know if this is the right wheel to all get on board on. I think it's clear that I've shared my reservations in the past on that, but that's the idea behind it. And since we're not where we want to be with what we've done, we should probably consider alternative.
So is it the state's idea to survey these kids about this behavioral stuff?
I think that they would share research on that, having the behavior, the math, and the reading. You've got 3 key pillars of academic success in play at once. And let me give you an example. It's only October 9th. We have elementary students who have already missed 25 days of school. Okay, so there's a behavior here that we need to dig into.
So do you need FastBridge to figure that out? Because I think you're a pretty smart guy. You know about the one that missed 25 days of school.
Well, the 25 days of school is the symptom. I don't know the cause.
And is MDE the one that's driving this, or is this MTSS, or, I mean?
We're required to have benchmarking data in preparation of the MCAs. That's a different statute. The math and the reading are always the areas where we historically did that. We used STAR. Before that, we used NWA, or what's called MAP testing.
This is the one-on-one thing that the teachers do.
This is one-on-one for K and 1, 2 through 12, it's an online test. The one-on-one I think you're talking about is our BAS literacy assessments. Yeah. Okay, that is a different assessment. And as we do the implementation of the READ Act, we probably will have to step away from that as a screener and reserve that only as a diagnostic. Its footprint is very large. It will compete for time with FastBridge. And at this point, it's probably too much assessing. As much as we do highly value that data, you can't do both easily. We're going to have to do this. We chose this year to continue doing it to make sure that first time through with FastBridge, we didn't know what kind of data we were going to get. We didn't know if you know, when we flipped the switch, the lights would go on. So we wanted to make sure that we still did what we have always done, so we had data to respond to. As we turn the corner into next year, we'll make the decision whether BAS gets sidelined or moved just to what we would call diagnostic work. So you screen kids, a much smaller pool you do diagnostic on based on your screener. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, you are. I mean, the thing that concerns me is that how many days a year are we gonna screen the kids, if that's 10 days or 12 days or periods, whatever, however you wanna count it, right? Those are just days that we're not teaching them, and it just feels to me like sometimes when the government gets involved, there's more reports, more assessments, and I just don't know where the value is, you know? It's like when you go up for the football team, you just run the 40-yard dash. They don't have you do it every week. You know, we're not gonna reassess them halfway through the season because they are what they, you know, I just hope that that the state's not pushing us in a direction that we're spending money on FastBridge. This is gonna be the new save all, gain all, and that instead of letting educators educate, teachers teach,
Okay.
they're constantly giving surveys out to check on people because we're just doing so many of them. And we're just adding another one, right?
We're trying to make it not an ad, but a transition to, because we're conscious of exactly the concern that you're sharing about the amount of testing. There is a state statute that says you're limited to 11 hours of testing throughout the entire year per child. Okay.
Really?
Yeah, and we're up against it. Okay.
Glad to hear that.
The elementary, we're up against it. The FastBridge assessing, or what we call the benchmarking, is something we're required to do 3 times a year. So each assessment takes, 25 to 30 minutes, roughly. So at the younger levels, it takes less time. The K1, K2 paper pencil ones are about 5 minutes apiece, but the teacher has to do that with a child because a child can't manipulate the computer in kindergarten to take an assessment. They don't have 100 sight word vocabulary. That's why the BAS question looms on us, because that's what pushes us up against the limit, is that BAS testing. So my expectation is we'll probably have to make a decision by that about the same time that we're examining the curricula in January. That way we have a comprehensive plan to bring forward so we can spend June, July, August prepping for any change that needs to occur.
Well, it's pretty cool that Nisswa and Riverside and Forest View did as well as they did. I'm hoping that there's some things we can learn from those other schools that maybe can go across. I know it's kind of could be an anomaly, but let's hope maybe it's not.
We can track the trend lines and we'll see how it goes. 2020 is a 0 year, there's no data. So everything after 2020 is a brand new trend line, and we're only really in year 3 now. So we'll be able to create the first 3-point trend line since the pandemic. And then the pandemic is a asymptote in the equation. At that point, it's all starts over. We have to re-baseline it and go from there.
I think in all fairness too, we need to recognize improvement in the respective buildings, not compare the respective buildings, because
I've
the
never
demographics are
shared
very
out the buildings this way before, and I'll be honest, I wasn't comfortable with it. This should never be competition between buildings. It should be an opportunity to say, hey, are you trying something that we haven't thought of? And hopefully supporting that conversation collegially and collaboratively. So there's no intent to create that. But sometimes without seeing the site data specifically, those issues of rates of poverty and the increased rates of special ed in schools of high poverty gets masked by the stats. Because it's a smoothed over, we're outperforming this state, which we do. But if you look at the mathematics, there are certain sites that are more driving that than others. And that's what we want to equalize out.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Murtha, it's exciting to see and hear about what we're doing with reading and math, is particular, and behavior as well. Because I think that's really, really important. It hasn't been looked at much, except for when it needs to be looked at.
You're absolutely correct. There's too much post-mortem analysis.
Yeah, So it's exciting, and also I'm pleased to hear that we're moving with alternatives or other phonetic kind of things as well, that we as a board have said needs, we hope it will happen as well. My question is this, will all of this continue to happen if the $250,000, because it's going to take training, and lots of training for our staff, and rightfully so. If the $250,000 grant doesn't come to fruition, what's going to happen? And let me also ask this, what can we do to help that process?
To answer the first question, will it happen? Yes. I'm going to say yes, and it will be a lot harder. We have to do it.
Yeah.
Whether the money, whether MDE or the state is giving us resources or not, our children need this, so we have to find a way. The support that I would ask from the board is recognizing the value of systemic staff development. Continuous improvement work is staff development. Curriculum work is staff development. You know, you roll the clock back to when you and I were younger men in staff development.
It's a long roll.
It's a long roll. Yours is longer than mine, but, you know, I did start in...
Thank you for that reminder, I appreciate that.
Oh, that was my pleasure, John. I started in the 80s, you started in the 70s or the 60s. The old model was everyone got a little slice of the site staff development pie. You went to whatever conference you wanted to. Highly individualized, depending on the efficacy of the individual, highly valuable, or not so much. We can't approach our limited resources that cavalierly anymore. We have to be very focused, very targeted. We have to be able to justify our use of the 2% set aside. We have to justify our investment, our commitment to ATPPS, as these are targeted structures within the district that support the district mission values and the continuous improvement action plans, and asking for that alignment. That's why last spring you saw me bring forward policy around ASDC. That's supposed to be the teacher-driven committee that does the work to align continuous improvement as staff development. And what's the action, the most important action we're taking right now is the development of the MTSS plan. That will require staff development resources. And that is, by definition, continuous improvement work. That's where we need to be.
Mr. Chair, I'm assuming that every district in the state, 332 or whatever it is applying for these grants as well.
I'm not so sure about that because this one, the CLSD grant, is a second posting on unused money.
Oh, okay.
So I'm kind of hoping it's, you know, don't tell anyone.
I thought I saw a thing that they allocated $7 million for it.
I don't remember how much it was, but they did.
Didn't seem like a lot for 361 schools.
There's 16.7 million allocated for staff development as well, but that's different than this grant.
Oh.
But again, that's 16.7, 361 school districts, intermediate to individual to massive.
Are we just going to automatically get that? Is that
no,
you have to apply for that too?
Yeah, and MDE is cautioning us, if you see the October update for the READ Act on the MDE's website, they are cautioning that there's going to be more demand than there are resources, so have your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
That's why we're focusing on the now. We want to hit January 1 ready to respond to the contingencies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could get more money?
Yes. Possibly.
Or we could get zero.
Or we could get zero.
Correct.
One of the
we don't have any yet, RJ.
I know.
One of the challenges for us in competitive grants with the state of Minnesota and the federal government is our rate of diversity has not been high enough to qualify for points in their rubric on those items. We might qualify for students in poverty, but we might not be as diverse as needed. That's been a challenge for us in the past. That's why one of the many reasons why identification is so important. Not only do we want to know who we are so we know how to be what we want to be, but sometimes it is a challenge for us.
And that is why Carrie applied for the max of 250. We may not get 250. We may get to 150. but we went for the max.
Correct.
My understanding from the meeting, yes.
We're shooting for the moon. Ms. Ross did a lot of very good work on that. She should be recognized for it. I don't know, Ryan, Janet, can I have the screen back for just a moment, please?
Yeah, I have a question on one of your slides, and I don't really want to, I can't get it out of my head, so I have to ask it. Go to your math one, MCA math. What's FRP?
Oh, that's Students in Poverty, Free and Reduced Price Lunch, FRP. That's the old term for it. We now call it educational benefit. I'm sorry, I still use the old terms once in a while.
It's fine.
Was that the only question?
No, my only point is, I'm sure you see it, just like I do. But if you look at 2017, my point is the delta between them isn't changing a lot. If you look at from 2017, we were at 51% of FRP. Now we're down to 34, and non-FRP was 77, and now we're down to 61. So
there is a downward
FRP is down
drift.
17%, the other one's down 16%. Then you go to special ed, kind of the same. 31 to 22, it's down 9, you know. It's like we kind of have a trend going, and of course 20's in there, but we were dropping before 20, and then 20 just kind of tanked us. And it's nice to see we're making a comeback, because some of those math scores actually went back up a little bit.
I think as some of the behavior issues and some of the trauma clears through, we're going to see that, but we can't rely on just the passage of time. We have to be more intentional. That's why we're starting to tinker with the instructional frameworks. We're changing how we're assessing. To answer what you raised earlier about FastBridge and the assessments, what the FastBridge, the A math assessment tells us is it tells us a couple of things. It tells us that here's a group of kids who are not at grade level, all right? And if we dig deeper, it will tell us these are the benchmarks they're missing, so the teacher can choose then the appropriate intervention to use in class. So the data cues the teacher to respond. And the FastBridge package has the interventions in it. So you didn't just buy a test. You bought a test that cues to an intervention, and they're different kinds. There's whole group, like the whole class. 50% of my kids failed my quiz. I'm reteaching. Here's a new way to do it. Here's a different way to do it, so you're not just doing it louder and slower. And if I have a small group of kids, here's a small group intervention. Or if I have an individual kid, here's an individual intervention. This is what the FastBridge data offers us, is the ability to drill in and be more targeted and efficient with time. That's what we're trying to do. What we want to do is build a system where every kid finds a way to be successful, whether it's in Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. And what I mean by that is our goal is that 85% of our kids are at grade level in core classroom instruction, Tier 1. 15% of our kids, or 10 to 15% of our kids, are at grade level with core instruction plus some help. And that last 5% of our kids, we want to be at grade level with core instruction, some help, and some highly individualized, high-intensive help. That 10 and 15, that 10%, 5% though only works if 85% are successful in core. That's what we got to drive to first. That's the first goal for us in the MTSS program is Tier 1 instruction is yielding that. And that's why you see the change in the language of the World's Best Workforce Goals. The World's Best Workforce Goals now say read at grade level each grade. They no longer say read well by third grade, because they've recognized that you got to get to that level every single year. Because otherwise, what happens is what's occurring to us. Students fall behind, and eventually they fall enough behind, they fall into special ed. And that's not the way we want to be. We cannot intervene ourselves to success. So our number one goal has got to be in core instruction and deliverance there.
Sure. One other point, and I drilled down on this at the curriculum committee meeting. We're not creating labels for these kids either. That was a concern that was raised by some people to me. Kids are not going to be labeled. I guess the one gal said, jars get labeled, not students. So that was asked and answered, and quite voraciously as far as we're not going to label these kids. So that was another concern, so.
So what I'm asking for is the approval of MTSS, Fast Bridge assessments, and our work in responding to the READ Act to be the district continuous improvement priorities in response to the Student Achievement Report.
So moved.
Second. Okay, we have a motion from Director Heidman and a second from Director Ward to approve the district site continuous improvement plan presented by Director Murtha. Any further discussion?
I just need to say thank you. This was very informative, and this was a lot of work, and I appreciate having this information.
Special kudos go out to Christina Lundgren, Sue Anderson, the staff of the Teaching and Learning Department. It was a team effort. They did a good job.
Thank you.
Who's going to make the MTSS plan? Do you buy that, or is that an internal thing we do?
Internal, we create it.
Do you have people that are experts in that field, or do you feel as though principals do? I mean, who does it?
One sitting to the
You?
left of you.
You do it?
Well, I'm not doing it, but there's a lot of people that have a lot of skills and are
So
very.
you guys make the handbook, like make the plan?
There are templates that you can get from Minnesota Department of Education.
Then you just tweak it for our.
And then you put your data in, you put your structures in. We also, as a leadership team, went through 15 trainings from MDE throughout the last 18 months for several hours on Wednesday afternoons, being trained in MTSS. Every principal participated in that. Representatives from the co-op participated in that.
Gotcha.
Some teachers did too.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you for round one, Director Murtha.
It was the shortest PowerPoint I ever brought to you. I do want the record to show. Okay, the next one I'm hoping we can move through more quickly because it's really a narrative of what we just talked through. This is a report that is required by the state of Minnesota to be filed every single year. The deadline for this is actually in December, but because we have everything for it now, because it comes out of our data retreat, we do these all together just to get it done. And then Sue and I ship this off to the state of Minnesota. And what it tells you is these are the goals that we're required to work on, and they're reflected in what we've talked about in continuous improvement. We want all children ready for kindergarten. We want to close all achievement gaps in the district. We want to have all students achieve grade level proficiency in reading at each level. All students attain college and career readiness before graduating from high school, and all students graduate from high school in 4 years. So you saw each of those component pieces in the presentation of the student data. What we've done this year is we've changed two things. Number one, I've already addressed. Read well by third grade is now read well at each grade. And the second one is we are submitting for MDE's review a different way of calculating and measuring career and college readiness. Christina Lundgren, Andrea Rusk, several teachers at the high school have been working for 2 years and did an amazing job in the pathways structure for students towards graduation. And in there are opportunities for students to demonstrate competencies beyond what the MCA shows. And so what we wanted to do is find yet other data points other than the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments to be a more comprehensive and full, well-rounded look at. That's why I submitted to you the website. There's a link in there on redefining ready. So taking AP classes, a score on the ACT, taking classes in the trades or in the vocational aptitude areas. These are opportunities for kids to show a different set of competencies that are career-ready competencies. And this is an area of strength for Brainerd High School and Brainerd Middle School for that matter in building that programming. So because they've done this work in building the pathways, we thought it appropriate now to try to identify a better way to measure that. So not all the eggs of success are in the basket of an MCA. It's an important assessment. We value it, but it's only one data point of several.
I love that change. I love the idea of recognizing, you know, that the opportunity beyond high school also involves walking out of here with some sort of credential or certification or, you know, hours of community service. That it's, yes, it's AP courses and college credits, but it's those other things as well, that they've got a marketable asset in themselves.
No, the work that they've done at the high school on this is amazing. Nothing short of.
If anybody gets a chance, you should look at the course catalog for the high school. It is impressive and amazing. So our students have lots and lots and lots of varied opportunities.
So in this action, I'm just asking for the acceptance of this report as it gets sent to the Minnesota Department of Education.
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Dondlinger with a second from Director Spear to approve the world's best workforce plan as presented. Any further discussion or questions for Director Murtha? Director Heiden.
One question, Mr. Murtha. And I think we've talked about this in curriculum meetings, so I just want to bring it out in the public as well. Do you feel one of our biggest challenges is going to be training the teachers that ordinarily aren't involved with literacy? Because now under the world's best workforce, it's not just grade 3, it's grade 4, 5, 6, 7, and through high school, and some of those teachers probably have not really been involved with literacy that much.
In fulfillment of the READ Act, any teacher at any level who's involved with the instruction in literacy has to be appropriately trained.
Okay, so, okay.
Okay, but to step out to the gray just a little. All teachers are literacy teachers within their content area, to the extent that there are subtle changes and subtle differences in the kinds of reading you do in math or do in science versus perhaps your English class. There comes a point where no one at the upper grade levels is really trained to be a reading teacher. I was a high school English teacher. I never taught reading. I assigned it. Okay. Had I learned some things, some tricks earlier, I might have been better at my job, but in those days you didn't. Yeah, you covered content. You were a content specialist. We focused on vocabulary development was our number one strategy. There needs to be more than vocabulary development in learning how to read at the upper grades. But vocabulary is different in math and biology and social studies than it is in language arts. And so there is an area for them to be within their content area reasonably and still do some form of instruction on how to read. You look at science, science uses the passive voice far more than any other level. Okay, just being familiar with that alone can very much help someone penetrate, complex text. So,
thank you.
Yeah, one thing. So, you know me, and these things just blow my mind. But we've got 1/3 of our kids, give or take a percent, that are missing, are not making it to 90 days, 90% of the school they're supposed to go to. Like you said, you've already got kids that miss 25 days. So we've got a goal to go from 67.5 to 70.5. To me, it just sounds crazy. And I mean, I'm not here every day in the fight with like you guys are, but don't we have rights? I mean, isn't this truancy, isn't there laws that parents have to get their kids to school? I mean, how does 1/3 of the kids, I mean, I know it's better than it is in Minneapolis, and it's probably better than the state average, But it seems to me like, man, I can't imagine back in the days, like, how does that happen? What do you guys do to them? Nothing? I mean, is it okay if they just get to come back tomorrow and there are no consequences?
This is where drilling into the why they're missing, I think, matters. Tim Murtha may have skipped a few classes in high school, more so than he should have. In the Gods of Ironic Punishment, made him a high school teacher.
There you go.
The reason there was his innate immaturity. That's different than the student who is staying home to take care of younger siblings.
Right.
So, yes, you're right. There's educational neglect can come into play, and there are statutes about this, and our partner in that work is the county.
Are they helping you?
I think they're doing all that they can with what resources they have.
That's what I thought.
As with our need to do interventions academically, we have to prioritize our work, and they probably have to prioritize theirs as well.
And so for you to get this reading up or to get the math scores up with someone that shows up for school 50% of the time, it's gonna be quite the challenge.
Yes.
Well, and then downstream of that, if they've been missing that much school, there are probably behavioral issues that come with them when they do come back.
If a child doesn't believe they can have success, that can blow out sideways very quickly.
I bet.
So those engagement pieces, get them in, keep them in, really do matter.
But I think there are some systems in place. I'm guessing the family service collaborative workers are.
Absolutely. We heavily rely on them.
Attendance and reaching out to families and.
Maybe I'm being naive, but it feels like the heightened focus on MTSS has to have some impact on that too, right?
I think it will. It also breeds awareness. You know, the more we communicate about behavior data, you know, the kids, think of it this way, the children do learn something about themselves by taking an assessment. So if they're being asked to reflect on their state of executive function, they're learning about being self-aware, which can improve their executive function. The more we communicate with parents that we're doing this, the more parents become aware that perhaps some of the opportunities that they took to, you know what, we're going to let her stay home from school today instead of nudging them out the door. You know, playing in the gray area will help by just being focused on it. That way we're not having to send the 5-day, 10-day letters home that are threatening legal action, which we do, and we send quite a few of them home. You get to that 15 days of consecutive absence, that's a mandatory drop. We have no choice. That's the law. You're dismissed from the school. You can reapply and we'll work with you, but we want to prevent getting to that level of intensity, because that's the kid who may never really come back even if they're physically there at that point.
Sad. Any other discussion? We have a motion on the table from Director Dondelinger, seconded by Director Spear. Hearing no further discussion, those in favor of approving the World's Best Workforce Plan as presented signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Ryan, I
guess you're-
apologize. I shut down the screen, so I closed out everything else when I closed my, okay, good. Because I killed it.
All right. And are you performing in Superintendent Hahn's stead for the SRO contract?
I do not think so. I
You could
think,
sit here and do it. Kenny?
Marcy, are you doing the SRO contract? Yeah, let's do it that way.
I think it's more Q&A than it is presentational, Marcy.
Thanks, Mr.
Thank you, Director Murtha.
Thank you.
You want a little Nicorette?
So
It's a little buzz.
first question I have, same contract as before, we're just going to re-up.
We just prorated the amount and made the effective date October 10th.
So we changed what we're paying them based on the amount of time they weren't providing the direct services to the district, but the contract's the exact same contract we terminated a meeting ago.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I think recognition needs to go out to the entire board, but specifically to Director Ward for taking point on sending the letter to the governor's office. I'm sure it was read.
I think it was.
I got a few calls.
But the thing about this contract is, you know, the stuff that I've read in the newspaper, and of course you can always believe what the newspaper says, talks about our Attorney General making amendments to the law. Now, if I remember my civics class, the only people that can do that are legislators. They're the only ones that can amend the law.
Talking about Ellison? The only thing I read was he made clarifications.
Well,
They weren't very clear.
I'm talking about some amendments here that, you know, he was talking about, and then the Attorney General for Hennepin County, I mean, she came out and said just the opposite of what Ellison said. So then there's some school districts that are just, they're kind of back at where they were before.
Well, I think it's fair to say that if you look at this statewide, there's a
You know?
political element to this. And there's no reason to hide from that, because in reality, that doesn't exist here for us in the same way. This is just a simple matter of, we got caught up in political ping pong that was taking place in the state capitol.
Correct.
Or rather, the Brainerd Police Department did. We really didn't. We just were a casualty of it.
And the other thing is, there's nothing we can do. We can sit here and say, yeah, let's use the same contract. But to me, it's the Brainerd City Council that needs to make the determination as to what's going to happen, and not the police chief, because the police chief answers.
Well, he makes a recommendation to them. I believe they're meeting a week from tonight to
Yeah, they're
ratify
going
the
to have
contract.
a board meeting on the 16th, so there's no way we can, I mean, we're just going to approve, what are we doing tonight?
We're signing the contract to send it to them so they can sign it and just renew it like it was 90 days ago.
Okay.
And that's typically what we do.
Okay.
It's whoever has the first meeting, basically. So if the city was to have the first meeting, they would approve it, and then we would approve it, or vice versa.
So liability issues have all gone away, right?
Their attorney is comfortable with it, is my understanding.
They're gonna.
The city attorney is comfortable? How about our current county attorney? Did he weigh in on it? Did anybody ask him about it? Or not? Maybe not?
I believe it was more so on their.
Oh, okay.
It's really of concern of anybody that could be legally sued or otherwise pursued through the police side of it, up through the city of Brainerd.
I'm concerned about the school district.
Yeah. Right, and the school district never had any increased liability throughout this entire process. We were just, like I said, sort of an innocent bystander to this whole thing.
Well, we have a lot of increased liability. I mean.
Not at the resource officer level.
Not the resource officer.
No,
but I mean,
that's a whole other topic, right?
Our staff has got.
Right, well, you've got the language
these
is,
rules
in
apply
the
to
law
them
is
as
the
well
language
as
in the law.
SROs.
But in the end, this is confined to the SRO thing, which I'll support under my renewed objection that I don't like how little power we have over to the ability to choose who that resource officer is in our schools. The Brainerd Police Department still has that. We can.
They hire the person?
Yeah, we can squeak, but they can overrule us and put whatever officer they want in our school, and I'm not in love with that provision. And I'll bring it up again when we renew the contract next year, and we'll see where it goes.
And
I'll make a
also,
motion.
second, Mr. Chair,
Director Ward.
also, you know, it's wonderful that I think that we have finally added some protection for our children and our staff, period. That was the whole purpose of all of what we have done, all of us together in the community as well, and statewide. But it's not a done deal. It'll be a legislative action next year. The only problem I had, and we had, is that I don't think it should wait until next year. I still think it should be now, or yesterday, or last week, or whatever. But it is what it is, and I'm thankful that we're able to get a contract for our children and our staff.
Well said. I mean, it goes back to, again, you don't know the value of deterrent measures until you don't have them.
Yeah.
It's very hard to measure prevention when it works.
Which begs the question, how's everything been going at the high school? Is Ms. Rusk still here?
Sorry.
Oh, you're on. How's everything been going without the SRO?
It's been well, but we also had an agreement that our SRO officer Drew would be assigned to our neighborhood.
Okay.
So he's made it a point, and other law enforcement from Brainerd PD have made it a point to be very visible in our neighborhood. We appreciate that.
Community partnerships are important.
So do we have any further discussion on the SRO contract as presented? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the SRO contract, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right.
Thanks,
next-
Marcy.
Next up is Director TC with the approval of the proposal from Mike's Tree Company for the snow removal services for 23-24, which we're told is going to be not as much snow this year.
I'm going to hold you to that because
I called everybody I know.
the last 2 years have not been that way. So, yes, in front of you is a proposal that was received during our RFP process, and I heard earlier a few people commenting about procurement thresholds and what we have to do and follow for state guidelines when we procure products and services, and this is one of those. So when we have a product that is over $175,000, we do have two options to us. One is a sealed low bid process. The other is a best value procurement, which we did not use in this case here. So in front of you is the bid for snow removal services. We only received one. We are a large district, and what I will say in my conversations with many of these plowing vendors that are out there, fewer and fewer people are wanting to do it. I think they're transitioning from less commercial and maybe a little more residential. It's my speculation at that point. But there are fewer and fewer people to get to bid on services like this. And so I feel very fortunate. Mike's has performed very well for us the past 2 years. And I'm glad that they bid for us again here this year. It is an increase from what we had previously. It's a 22% increase from last year. And to Director Boyle's comment, we had a record snowfall last year. I think that is a portion of this increase. We had over 85 inches of snow last year. We had 77 inches the year prior and 48 the year prior to that. So if we could rewind and go back to those two years ago levels, I would be okay with it for the most part.
And these go year to year?
This is a 1 year bid. Yep, that's correct.
Mr. Chair.
Director Ward.
Thank you. Mr. Teasy, as I looked at this prior to the meeting, there were two, Brainerd Learning Center and Nisswa Elementary that are not bid on.
Yep.
What's with that?
2 years ago, the first year that they provided services for us, they did plow all sites for us. However, we were under construction at many of those. So it worked that they had manpower and equipment to plow the sites that we were not under construction at. So last year when we were evaluating the proposals, they asked us if they could strategically not travel to Nisswa and to the east side of Brainerd, just where they stage their equipment. Logistically, it made sense for them. They said they would plow it. It would cost us more money. And so what we did there is I have two grounds workers that work in the district. They are taking care of those two sites. And then they are going around to the elementary schools and they help clear playgrounds and they help clear other stuff. So there's a portion of this snow removal service that we do with our grounds workers. Again, I have 2 employees. So to have them plow every single lot would be impossible. We would never be open on time.
To have who? Mike's plow it?
No, I have two grounds workers that work for the district. So
those two
Brandon
grounds
and
workers
Tim
can take care of the lots at Nisswa Elementary?
They go up to Nisswa. Yep, they go up to Nisswa and they take care of the Brainerd Learning Center because they do stage out of the high school farm on the east side of town.
In your discussions with them, I don't know that it's outlined in the proposal in terms of snow removal. I mean, I know one of the issues we had last year due to the sheer quantity of snow was the high school parking lot, the new parking lots in particular got kind of full up. Is there any contingency or discussion about how we might do that differently if that happened again or not?
We pay for removals. So throughout the year, obviously we evaluate what we have on site. How many stalls are we taking up with snow? We try to minimize that to the best of our ability. We don't remove it at every single snowfall either. So it's kind of like that balance. And Mr. Cottsmith and Ms. Rusk at the high school, we're in communications regularly. And if they say, hey, we get a couple student complaints because they're running short on parking, we call them up. And the next day at 5 o'clock in the morning, they're there with semis pulling snow.
So it's not an umbrella service provided under the contract, it's an hourly.
It's an hourly
based on
rate,
how
yep,
on
yep.
demand, how we ask for it.
And at the end of it there, that's the equipment that they use. So if it's front end loader and semi or
Okay.
skid steer and dump box or whatever, they'll move snow however we need to.
Okay.
And that's where last year, that's where a lot of our costs above the contract came from. I think we had about 20,000 in removing snow last year across the parking lots. It was a lot of snow.
Director Heidman?
Yeah, full disclosure, Director TC is my nephew. So I just want everyone to know that. I've mentioned it a few times. A couple of questions. Lost time to injuries and staff and students. Did we have a lot last year?
No, we've actually, the last 2 years have been really good. Prior to Mike's providing snow removal services for us, so they've done it the last 2 winters, we didn't plow unless it was over 3 inches of snow. So I'm sure you all have a sidewalk and you all have an apron or you all have property where if you plow regularly, you can keep that snowpack down. If you don't, you end up with a skating rink. And in years prior, we did have lost time accidents from staff and students. And I mean, we still get them. We do with the best we can, trying to keep our walkways and drive lanes free and clear of ice and snow. But you know, we really do feel like we've been minimizing those the last couple of years. And if Director Bennett was here, we'd talk about our lost time claims and for snow injuries, and they are very low.
One is the massively senior board member here with my 3 years, almost.
Doesn't matter.
This Mike's transition was really good. I remember the first year I was on the board when we were dealing with the prior situation. Mike's has done really an excellent job over the last 2 years, especially given some unique weather conditions.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how much snow we get, we're paying, there's a monthly and a yearly rate per parking lot.
Yeah,
so,
it's the same.
yeah.
It's essentially the same number. It's just broken down over the 8 months that we have the contract set up for. There was a lot of discussion, and Director Boyles may remember this. The gentleman that sat would have been to your left, that was there before Mr. Hagelin, brought up the comment about, you know, it's a flat fee. So if, you know, we get a really bad year, Mike's loses their backside on the project like they did probably last year. And that's why we're seeing a little bit of an increase in price. However, if we have a really, really bad year, then we are kind of out a little bit. But when you stretch this out over years and years and years and you have this, it's kind of like paying for insurance. You know, you pay for it whether you use it or not. Same sort of a deal. Like if we get really hammered with snow, we're going to be taken care of. So.
And I just make another comment, more so for the board, for us to consider when we start talking about next year. And that is, right now you're under the gun, from my understanding, as far as your budget is concerned. We've got, 3 million square feet that you have to maintain? And you have a budget of what, $824,000 this year?
A little this year is a little bit more, but next year that budget's.
And next year it's dropping up about the 785 or whatever.
Yep.
Just something that we need to at least think about, and that is, we charge kids to park. Okay. Where does that parking money go? In my opinion, it should be going back into Mr. TC's budget, because he's the one that's got to plow. If we don't plow the parking lots, there ain't no place to park. And I don't know what the policy has been of the school district prior to this. Frankly, I don't care what it was. But I think we need to look at that from a board standpoint of, why isn't he receiving those assets? His budget right now is under pressure.
This comes out of the general fund budget, which, I mean, again, it's all.
The snow plowing comes out of general fund?
Correct. It's services.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't?
Pull it out.
It comes out of the general fund, yep. Marcy, am I correct on that? General fund, this one's, yeah. That's correct.
Again, since we're a little off topic anyway, are the stairs at Gitch's EV working now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, just something for us to think about going into next year, because, you know, I don't know, I don't even know how much money gets raised through parking fees, but I mean, I would think, I'm not an accountant, I was never good at math. I'm good at spending, but I wasn't very good at math. But I would like to think that that should flow back into his budget, and that's for another day, another discussion, but I want to bring it up now. And that's why I gave full disclosure. I'm not trying to pad his budget, but I mean, if he's got a budget that he can't do his work, well, jeepers, why isn't some of that revenue flowing back into his budgets? So, something to think about.
Mr. Chair. Ms. Teasy, I still want to go back to Nisswa and Brainerd Learning Center.
Yep.
What's Plan B if those guys get sick, those two guys you were talking about, if they get sick or their equipment, you know, every snow plower that I know, and we use it at our house, at some point in time in the winter, their equipment's down.
Yep.
So because I don't want to see Nisswa Elementary or Brainerd Learning Center all of a sudden not covered.
So we've got 3 pieces of equipment that we travel and plow with. One of them is mainly on site at Forest View. So when I said 2, I meant I have 2 people that travel. I have another one that mainly stages at Forest View Middle School. So, if one of those guys is out sick, we can cover it typically, or the one guy will come in extra early and start work for the day earlier to cover that. We haven't had that instance where we've had a gap where we couldn't do it. And if we need assistance, I can tell you that we've had conversations with Mike's. If we need assistance, we can get it.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know.
They would roll from Sportland Corners or wherever else that they're plowing.
Just call Terry at the Pickle, he'll help you out.
Oh, BJ's got a guy.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, any further discussion or questions for Director Teasy?
Has it been moved yet?
It has not.
I'll move it.
I'll second. Oh.
Feels like Director Heidman got in there just a fraction earlier. So we have a motion from Director Ward, a second from Director Heidman to approve the Mike's Tree bid and contract for 2023-2024 snow plowing and removal. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in, read.
Paul, I just want a point of clarity for you. So the price increase is not in the general fund, in the Buildings and Grounds general fund budget. I was talking with Marcy earlier, and this could be recommend it would be like a one-time allocation out of the unassigned fund balance to the Buildings and Grounds Department to cover that increased price. And then next year we can reevaluate services if it so pleases the board.
Not sure much pleases this board, but we'll take it as it comes.
So is that like another motion, another thing you're asking for?
I think it
or
would
what's
just
that
be
deal?
direction to the business services manager on how we would fund that.
I think the 2 board members on the finance committee should dig into that more.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I think so.
That's your job, John. You're the snowplow guy.
All right, thanks for the clarification, Director TC. Any further discussion, clarification, or questions? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Director TC. Next up is the approval of the first reading of the MSBA policies as presented. We only have one tonight, since we wiped out a few on the consent calendar. And this one's around vending machines.
So as you saw, there was a number of them that we reviewed, and this one was one that is an MSBA recommended policy, and we do not have that in place right now, and there has been some questions about if we should get some in some of our sites. So just wanted to get this in our queue so that if we do potentially bring them on site, we have the policy in place.
Excellent. So since this is a brand new policy, it's going to have to go 3 times, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So we don't do anything.
We can ask questions.
Yeah,
Well,
we can ask
questions, but there's
for the
no-
policy committee to review this if there are things in the policy you would like to see added.
There's no motion or anything.
Just we move to approve the first reading, then it goes to policy committee and we'll take a look at it and see if we want to tweak it at all.
I'll make a motion and approve the first reading.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Donnellinger with a second from Director Spear to approve the first reading of MSBA policy 720 for vending machines. Any further discussion? Director Heidman.
Just a question, Marcy. We don't have no vending machines in our schools at all, huh? No?
So there are some in break rooms but not,
For students? Okay. Since COVID, I suppose, huh?
I think with construction, I want to say the high school. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you don't want to touch those things, you know?
Brave.
Any further discussion
Do
or
vending
questions?
machines generate income or, not income, but generate?
They can. I mean, that was, I think more so the goal was to see if we could have students stocking them, learning that, and then potentially also earning some funds in their student activities. That was the inquiry I got.
Okay, interesting.
Is there a bid process for this? Or are we just gonna go pick somebody and, or are we gonna call a bunch of people up and say, hey, you wanna put vending machine, or what are we gonna do?
So it's in inquiry only right now
Okay,
about that.
okay.
So we don't have any procedures, no processes, none of that.
We don't need much.
And that's why we have
Give
to
some
have
money, Mars.
that's why we have a policy that I suppose we need to look at, huh?
Yeah, I think the chair of the policy committee should get right on that.
Yeah, I think that the second person on that committee is taking over because I might miss the next meeting. No, in all seriousness. So we're back to that, I see in this policy, 10,000, well, we don't even know how much we're gonna make, so we can just talk to anybody we want right now, right?
Right. I imagine that if we did want to go further into this, we would solicit bids.
Okay.
It all depends on if you read through there, if you want to use a vendor or if you want to do it district staff, students.
Yep.
So we have to decide which way we want to do
And
it.
in theory, you have an existing vendor for the ones that are in place in non-student areas today,
A
right?
lot of those ones are done by staff. Like, for instance, the one here at Wesby was just done by staff. They
Okay.
would stock
Really?
it. And,
We gotta buy the product. They provide us the vending machine, or do we have to pay for that?
I think that one was our own machine. I'm not 100%
Oh,
on that.
okay.
But-
We're gonna sell stuff that sells then, right? Like a lot of sweet stuff, you know? Or is it gonna be all
Might
this
want to
healthy
talk to
stuff?
Alyssa on
Oh,
that.
okay.
The restrictions of that.
Rules and rules, huh?
Yes. 'Cause
Okay.
we can only have certain times that they can be on. There's all sorts of rules on that.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
We just gotta get the policy and we could call her on Wednesdays, talk to her about where the vending machine's going. Could be on the vending machine committee,
There you go.
Subcommittee, have to be a subcommittee.
I suppose.
Wow. Well, I could see where it could be a moneymaker. I mean, you know, and it would be good for the students if they could incorporate it somehow into some classroom activity or whatever.
Well, I won't support it unless there's Cheez-Its in all the vending machines. Just putting it out there.
Noted.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of policy 720, first reading, MSBA policy 720, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, next up would have been the report of the evaluation committee. The reason that this was originally placed on the agenda for this evening was in anticipation of a board appeal of the committee's decision. And as I understand it, there is no appeal pending. Is that correct?
Pending, yes. But it was not coming tonight.
Okay. Okay, so in the absence of that, what we're going to do, as Director Heidman indicated, on October 25th, there is a policy committee meeting. Director Heidman chairs that committee. I second seat that committee with him. And we are going to begin digging into policy 606. In fact, Superintendent Hahn and Director Murtha, and I'm sure a cast of others have already begun going in at the board's direction to begin looking at some of the more complicated elements of the policy. So we're in a weird position with the policy as it relates to, we're waiting for a template or a new policy to come down from MSBA. So almost all of the policies that we use as a school district are based on boilerplate policies that come to us from MSBA. Director Ward, Superintendent Hahn, and I were at a MSBA session back in, gosh, was it June already? It was June or July. And we went to a session on that where MSBA's legal indicated that they were going to draft a new policy that not only was it going to be clearer than what they have today, which dates back to antiquity. We revised ours 9 years ago, but that they intend to create sub-policy for library books versus curriculum to make the delineation between those a little bit more clear. So it's a long way of saying what we don't want to do is go in and completely rewrite 606 at the district level only to get a boilerplate policy from MSBA that somehow conflicts. We're going to try to tweak it. One of the speakers tonight spoke about the series, the books in the series. We'll talk about that at the policy committee level. We'll talk about several other elements. So if you're that interested in what's going on with policy 606, it will probably come back to the board in November for another look based on what the policy committee does here at the end of October. So please feel free to attend that October 25th policy committee meeting on 606. The public, it is open to the public. But that's a really long way of saying that's why it's not on the agenda tonight. We had it as a placeholder in case you chose to appeal this evening. All right, so that said, let's move along to committee meeting updates.
Hot dog.
All right, well, let's go up. First up is long-range planning with the solistic stylings of Director Dondelinger.
I don't know what that means. We met a couple weeks ago. We went through we're doing that ADA look over of all our playgrounds and all of our facilities, and that the company's not quite done with it yet. And then the next deal is the high school farm has been kind of an issue because the county has all of a sudden decided they don't want to have it anymore. And I don't know where Reed went, but I think we've had it for 40 years, 35 years for $5 or $25 a month or a year lease. So we're trying to work some stuff out with them. It's in process. And last but not least, we met with community ed, kind of went through fees, structures, and who's paying for cleaning and what we're charging for buildings. And other than that, there's no hot deals, except that we're almost done with these projects and they're just going through the punch list. And there's a few things left that needs to get straightened out, and we'll be out of the construction business, back in the education business.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Dondelinger. Curriculum Committee meeting, Director Heidman.
Well, thanks to Mr. Murtha's great explanations, my talk will be a lot shorter. We talked about the continuous improvement plan. He mentioned that. We talked about MTSS. We had a lot of questions regarding behavioral issues and the SABRE assessment tool, et cetera. Talked about FastBridge. So all of the things that Director Murtha talked about, we talked about in our committee meetings, along with the READ Act. I also want to give a shout out to Ms. Ross, who is our Director of Student Support Services and Equity. She's leading that charge on that $250,000 grant. I didn't realize that it was separate from the READ Act money. So this is, man, if we can get some more money, will be fantastic. We had our first district advisory committee meeting. It was the first one in September. And basically, Director Murtha went through and reviewed the world's best workforce that he gave the presentation here tonight. And also gave us a calendar of events for the entire school year, because what he does is he brings in the curriculum experts. There's always a lead curriculum person, and he needs to get those people on the calendar so that they can prepare for their discussions at the DAC meeting. So that was went through, and other than that, I really don't have anything else.
Great, thank you, Director Heidman. Next up is information. We'll start off with the BPSF update from Director Spear.
A couple things I can mention. We welcomed 3 new board members to the Brainerd Public Schools Foundation. Daniel Hood from CTC, Ashley Gabrick from Mid-Minnesota Federal Credit Union, and Ann Soberg from the county. So if you see them, tell them thank you for supporting the schools and being part of that. We also devised what's being called the Warrior Club sponsorship for events for Brainerd Public Schools Foundation, and it's meant to streamline any kind of sponsorships, like for the big event and for the bingo event and so forth that are coming forward, to make that more of a one-time deal for businesses to be able to come in and offer and sponsor those events, rather than every time there is an event to have to go back to businesses. And the idea is to have some more value adds that we can bring to that, and more of a relationship than a one-off offering. So far so good on the conversations around that. The 4A grant cycle is open right now, and the deadline for that is October 24th. So those dollars are for teachers that have special projects that they want to bring forward and need funding for. And to save the dates for you, December 4th is a Monday, is a big bingo event, and February 3rd is the big event, and that will be at Grandview.
Very good. Thank you, Director Spear. All right, moving along to Director Brecken with the latest on the Equity Task Force.
Okay, so we had our first meeting for the school year in September. We'll meet again tomorrow. The Equity Task Force has offered to present the committee's recommendations from the 2022-23 work that was done regarding social, emotional, behavioral supports and future needs at our next school board retreat, which has not been scheduled at this point.
That's correct.
Right?
We're targeting something November.
Okay. So Aaron Karlgaard is very willing to present at that, when we get together for that meeting. Yeah, there were many recommendations around creating inclusive and welcoming language, training on responding to bullying and harassment situations for students and staff, and creating building equity liaisons to support questions, concerns that arise in the building. So those will be some of the recommendations that she will reference when she speaks with us. Going forward, we are really focusing on creating community partnerships. When we talk about community in schools, it's those connections between schools, businesses, formal and informal organizations that enrich students' school experiences. So we're hoping to figure out how we can reach out to the community organizations to provide students with a variety of opportunities. That's where we're at.
Great, thanks for that. I mean, I apologize, I missed that last meeting. I'll be at the one tomorrow, I think. But those recommendations that are coming forth, or at least what Aaron wants to present to the board retreat, we're still inside that student safety bucket, right?
Right
We haven't
now,
moved
we're
on to
inside the student safety bucket from last year. We're starting to move into now this community.
So just for the board's edification, the Equity Task Force, as it kind of was reimagined maybe a little over a year and a half ago, the idea was there were areas of concern or focus that were identified, and the first one of those on the list was student safety. So there were surveys that were done. There was analytics around data, and Tim, and you can probably speak to it better than I can, but anyway, they were prioritized, and student safety was felt to be the first one because it impacts the entire student population. And so that's really where the focus has been for almost the entire time that I've been on there, and certainly the entire time that you've been on there. Did I say all that correctly, Tim?
Yeah, you did. You nailed it.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle. All right, business services report. I just feel like we should play like the Emperor's March from Star Wars when Marcy comes up with the financial report.
So in your board packet is a financial report. The only thing to note is the post-employment benefits, that's the Fund 45. If you're looking at comparing it to last year, we are higher, and that's because we did have a retirement in August. So just an FYI on why that variation is a little bit higher. And then with the conversation earlier, I just wanted to address the parking fees. They go into the general fund, so technically they do offset the snowplow removal. It doesn't necessarily go directly into the buildings and grounds budget, but it's collected, goes into the general fund and offsets expenses.
I think, I know for myself, I was thinking that with Reed's limited funds, that he had to do the plowing, I mean, I knew he had to replace the doors, replace the roofs, if a window gets broken, it all comes out of LTFM money. And I guess I thought plowing was included in that, so I'm happy to hear it comes out of the general fund. Still costing us the same amount of money, it's just, it's hard to maintain these buildings with the position that he's been put in after what's happened in the past.
Just an FYI on that.
Okay, thank you on that.
And then the enrollment report, we are up 9 from last month, and the 5-year average of comparing month to month is down 15, so that's a positive. Just
Good.
wanted to share that on that.
Is this ADMs or students?
So the 10-2 column is student count.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how do we get paid from the state? I mean, I know.
ADMs.
Okay, it's, okay.
Yep. One is we're trying to measure the social impact of students in, students out, butts in seats sort of thing. The other one is funding, because they don't exactly correlate, but for all intents and purposes, they do.
So the light blue column is, that's what we get paid.
Yes, that's the budget, that's what's in the budget.
Okay.
That's what the budget is, right?
Yep.
What, What's the community service fund?
That's everything to do with our summer programs, classes, basically anything Anne Marie or Director.
So anything community ed?
You got it.
So does this include what we take in?
This is only the expense side. Do you want to see revenues?
It wouldn't bother me.
I can work on something.
I mean, it'd be nice to know.
Yep. This was created, we had several years ago a Standard & Poor's review, and they were surprised that we didn't give any type of report to the school board, and my previous district we did as well. So I kind of mimicked what was given at the previous district, so we can change it, modify it.
Well, we can talk about it in finance committee.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks.
Any other questions for Marcy on the enrollment or financial? Thanks, Marcy. Have a good night. Next up is the superintendent's report with a decidedly not Dr. Hahn looking individual filling in tonight for a superintendent that's not feeling well.
Pleasure to be here. I have just two things to share. First and foremost, Dr. Hahn wishes to thank everyone who had anything to do with homecoming. The homecoming experience in town was nothing short of amazing. So there's a couple of shout outs that just have to be made to Ms. Rusk and to Andrea Anderson at the high school and the work that they did in organizing it. Jack Freeman, Michelle Freed, Josh Fordyce, Brian Stubbs. These are staff members who went above and beyond in making sure that this was a really positive and energetic experience, not just for the kids, but for the whole community. The sports boosters stepped up and made contributions. Hubbard Radio made contributions. Many others did as well, from the parade to the game to the whole enchilada. It was really just an amazing experience for all involved. So thank you to all. The last thing that I have is an opportunity to share an acknowledgement as today is Indigenous Peoples Day. On this day, we honor the indigenous peoples of our land and recognize their history, culture, and ongoing contributions. We gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. It's our hope that our acknowledgement today and ongoing educational activities inspire our students, families, staff, and community to take action to learn about and to support our Indigenous communities. On behalf of Brainerd Public Schools, thank you.
Thank you, Director Murtha. All right, let's move along to our director comments. Once again, I guess we're doing this alphabetical. I'm up first. I have no additional commentary this evening. I will turn it over to Director Bracken.
I think I'm just gonna, we kind of, this was in our agenda, but we didn't really spend a lot of time talking about it. So I just want people to be aware of the request for bid for the building trades house that is happening this fall. Do people have access to this, this request for bid document?
Is it in the agenda?
It's in the agenda.
Yeah, if it's in the agenda, it's on the website, which means
It's on the
anybody can get to it.
website. Okay.
So the contract and all that stuff was out there as
Yep.
part of the,
So
no,
I-
there's Marcy again. We thought she was gonna have a good night.
Good, okay.
You can't get rid of me tonight.
That's okay, good.
So that will also be posted in the paper.
Great.
And then we're gonna put it on Facebook. It'll be posted on the website.
Okay.
We'll try to get it, and if you guys know of any other avenues, we'll try to get it out there as much as possible.
Great, yeah, because I think the bids are open now and,
So it's not open yet.
No,
We'll
okay.
get it posted in the newspaper, and then there'll be official bid opening, and then at the December board meeting, you guys would approve who the winner was.
okay.
Will they identify where they can pick up spec sheets or anything like that? Or how will they,
On there is Brad Watson's contact info if they have question about the purchase, and then Brian Boardwell's contact info is on there if they have questions about the house.
gotcha. Thanks, Marcy.
So I just wanted to bring attention to that possible offering that's through our district.
Great,
That's good.
thanks, Michelle. Next up is Director Donnelly, or DJ, all you.
I was planning on talking about this anyways, 'cause whatever. The deal is that kids need to go to school, and we need to get them to school. And, you know, it's easy to point fingers at, you know, I'm doing it all the time about Minnesota's scores. And I think the Brainerd scores need to be better. But people need to send their kids to school. Those kids deserve it. It's their only opportunity. And the reason I'm on this board is because without those opportunities, there's so many people that I've worked with in my career that came from nothing. And they're very successful, and they're good people, and they pay their taxes, and they do what they're supposed to do, and they keep their nose clean. And without education, I don't see how that's going to happen. I think it's time for, you know, I'm concerned about the country. I'm concerned about our community. And I don't know what difference it makes what I'm concerned about, but I just like to see, you know, if you've got a brother, sister, kids, cousins that aren't sending their kids to school, maybe give them a little nudge. Help them out, maybe pick their kid up. I don't know, I've talked to so many teachers before I got elected, after I got elected. I was talking to a couple this weekend. And, you know, when little first graders are missing 65 days of school and can't write their name hardly, it's a problem. And I don't know what a teacher's supposed to do about it, especially when they have 25 kids in their class. It's a problem. You know, last thing I'll say, but I think it's a sign of the times, I guess I'm gonna say two more things, is 40% of 28-year-olds are living in their parents' houses. So you might wanna kick them out, make them start to work. And number two, look what's happening in Israel. So, you know, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I know this, there's a lot of people in the world, and the Americans are running around worrying about all these weird things. Like, there is serious issues going on in our world, and we're so isolated because this country's so wealthy and so privileged. You know, I've mentioned it to a few of my friends. I remember when we were kids, everyone would come to our house because we had the newest house and we had air conditioning. Like, no one had air conditioning. Can you imagine someone not having air conditioning now? That'd be inhumane. So that's where we've gone, and I guess that's only been about 40 years, Randy, but you know, think about it. Let's get these kids to school. And these principals, I've talked to Heidi about this. I'm sure she didn't mention it to you. If you need help with the county, I'd be more than happy to go sit down with them for you. And they have a job to do, and they can complain about their budget if they want. But you know what? These kids are more important than their budget, and maybe they got to figure out a way to get it handled, in my mind. They need to help us get these kids to school. So I'll quit talking.
Thank you, DJ. Director Hyman.
I was not going to say anything, but I'm not going to say anything.
Thank you, Randy. Director Spear.
I was not going to say anything either, but I'm going to piggyback.
Let the record note I didn't say anything.
I wasn't going to.
On what Director Dondelinger was speaking to, because I think we've all probably had questions on the clarification that was brought about through the attendance policy and through the handbook work. And I think it was good clarification, and it wasn't meant to be punitive, but it was to help parents understand that, you know, we're beholden to have those kids in school for, you know, the number of days that it's supposed to be, and legally bound to have them there. And so having their partnership in that and helping clarify what those absences are, even for me as a parent, was super useful to know what was excused and unexcused, and how that's even looked at by the district. So I'm happy we made that clarification, even if it's unpopular right now. I think it'll be useful.
Thank you, Sarah. Director Ward.
I'm going to say something.
No.
I just want to also echo Superintendent Hahn's remarks about homecoming. There were a lot of people, as Mr. Murtha said, that really made homecoming unbelievable. But I want to share with you just a couple, and also the whole homecoming experience, from Pep Fest to dress-up days, where we also included elementary kids in the elementary schools and kind of raised it up. And then to top it off with the community choir concert that John Erickson and Brian Stubbs and many people worked on was absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And but the comments that I got from folks, especially alumni, especially from kids that I coached, you know, that were here for homecoming, right? It was this: it's so great to have homecoming back and have the spirit of the Warriors back. Those two things are critical in recruiting kids and keeping kids and getting kids into school. Having the Warriors back and having the spirit back, and it's kind of like if you build it, they will come kind of deal or whatever, in my opinion.
Well, we built it.
We have built it, and we got to get them to come. And so anyhow, I agree totally with that. But anyhow, homecoming was unbelievably great with a lot of people's work. So thank you for that as well. I also want to point out that Region 5, I've talked to Heidi about this, and I've talked to Misty Jope, the Education Minnesota president. Region 5 has $1,000 innovative grants available to all educators. And what that is, if you've got something in your classroom, educators or principals or educational staff, that you think, you know, would be remarkable for these kids, to keep our kids, to retain our kids, to get them back again or whatever, here's an opportunity to apply for a grant through Region 5, $1,000. And I know that's not a lot, but it's a start. It's a start for something. The deadline date is not until February 28th. And I can give you more information on how to do that, but it's also, as I said, through Region 5. Maybe, do you know something about that, sir?
I think it's the Innovative Schools Grant.
Yeah, Innovative Schools Grant.
Yeah, they're an independent agency, but yeah.
So I just wanted to make our educators aware that this money is out there. You know, I heard Mr. Murtha say, you know, there's some of this unused money. Well, if it doesn't get applied for, it goes away. So we got a lot of great educators and staff, educational staff in this district, hands down. So there's some money opportunities for you there. Get out there and get it. Thank you.
Let the record note that Director Ward was within his 3-minute time limit.
Absolutely.
Do board members
Thanks, Jeff.
qualify for the Innovation Award? I can get pretty innovative.
All right. All we have left is go over future meetings real quick. October 9th, of course, tonight, the meeting here at Wesby in our glorious new facilities. And I'm sure Mr. Erickson's going to fill us all back in over here at some point, make it all look good. Is that?
That's under discussion with the real superintendent.
Okay.
Don't point at me.
October 12th and 13th, we have AASA training at Sourcewell. The 19th and 20th of October is obviously the what is still referred to as MEA weekend, even though it's EM now.
Really?
Yeah. And then we have a policy committee meeting, as I discussed earlier, on October 25th. That's at 12 o'clock here at the Wesby building. On November 6th is the BPSF board meeting. November 9th, Garfield Veterans Program at 1:15. November 10th, there's a lot going on with the veterans programs at Riverside, the high school, Harrison, and Nisswa. And then our next regular board meeting is on November 13th, 6 o'clock p.m., right in this very room with this fancy new ceiling. That, I believe, is our agenda for this evening.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn from Director Donnellinger with a second from Director Spear. Any discussion? Hearing none in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?